Get started today. Again, thank you all for coming, and sorry about last week. It was one of those, you were glad I wasn't here. And that you weren't sitting in a room and found out that after the fact I was got the stomach bug, and then be thinking about that yourself. So good that we weren't together last week. But since we weren't planning on having class next week, we're going to have class next week. I know if you're going to be gone or something, that's fine. We'll record it. We'll just kind of moved everything a week because it's too much to try to combine material on a week to that. So we will have class, even though in the original schedule it wasn't there. We will have class next Thursday afternoon. We're not going anywhere for spring break. Our older boys want to work more than they want to go to somewhere fun. So we didn't get to go anywhere fun this year. Oh. But I suppose that's good. If you could see their bank accounts, they need to they need to work. So all right. So we'll meet next week, and hopefully we'll have a guest or two. Hopefully from Fork and from the Lakeland Pantry, who'll be talking about some of the things more directly into our particular area, dealing with that, and it'll be a chance for us to hear about what their programs and organizations do, as well as a chance for us to ask questions, and also really a great chance for us as a church to really hear firsthand how we can engage and support and participate in those wonderful organizations for our area. But with that, let's take a moment and get started together today. And if you just took a bite, that's fine, don't worry. But let's read our prayer together here for us today. God of justice and compassion, you open your hands and satisfy every living creature. Open our hearts to those who worry about feeding their families. Help us to open our minds and our hands to feed them. Amen. All right, wonderful. So this week we're gonna do some exercises and conversations about some of the things we've known, we've heard, and really kind of start asking ourselves the question, what can be done about the issues of hunger and food insecurity? But as we do this, I want you guys to just listen again to some of the impacts that food insecurity has on people. And this, so I'm just going to go over handout 4 a little bit. If you have that handy, you can look at it. But we see for children that hunger impacts their learning, their engagement in school. They have poor school achievement. They're more likely to repeat a grade. They are in need more often for special education. They have more absences, suspensions. Hunger impairs cognitive development. And we can see that there's lots of effect on behavior as well as health. They have a significantly lower overall health and effects for their health. For adults, we in hunger, obviously, if we are not eating properly, we have poor health. But food insecurity has a higher is a higher risk factor for conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, cancer, osteoporosis, anemia, and other chronic conditions. Adults who are hungry are often struggle with depression more frequently. And the obesity and hunger in America has a profound link together. And some of the hunger, so the research shows, I'm reading a book about this, and it's fascinating to read that some of the hungriest counties in America where there's the highest rates of food insecurity are the by far and away the most obese counties in America as well. And so the researchers are linking that to what food is available is so nutrient sparse but calorie dense that it's just profound, causing significant rates of obesity. And some impacts that we didn't talk about before on handout 4, is that hunger weakens workforce productivity. They show of workers who struggle with food insecurity, they are not as productive. There increases the healthcare costs for a community as well. Increases the demands on social services and criminal justice systems. That we could see that would be but in areas where there is significant hunger and food insecurity issues, there is significant reduced economic activity and tax revenue because of lower incomes. So just to remind ourselves here, there are some real individual effects of hunger that affects the person no matter the age. As well as there are significant impacts of hunger to the larger community as well. And those are good things to keep in mind, because I want us just to take a moment and picture ourselves in whatever scenario you want to come up with, but that you find yourself food insecure. Maybe a spouse has died and income wasn't able to be replaced. The retirement. So there was some kind of a snafu, and no longer have the economic resources that you had before. You're laid off for a significant period of time. You get hurt. And can't work, or you're whatever, picture in your head that you have found yourself now food insecure. Can you do that? Are you thinking of that? Best you can. I suppose I should ask, has anyone, I know one person who not able to be here today has expressed to me of a significant period of time in her life that she was significantly food insecure. Has anyone ever really experienced that on a personal level? Mm-hmm. Sue? Okay. Mm-hmm. Deb? You have? Okay. So so if you have, think about that time, or the best you can. So what might you do if you find yourself now food insecure? What do you think you would do?
Go to the food pantry if I could get there.
Okay. You'd go to the food pantry.
See if you qualify for any of the food stamps or whatever they call them now.
You would look into to assistance programs. Mm-hmm. Good. Mm-hmm.
Take advantage of Tom's Table.
Mm-hmm.
A real good meal,
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it's only once a month, but.
Yeah, but you're assuming you can drive.
Right. So that's like Sue said. Sometimes what are some of the barriers that we have to some of the things. So the first suggestions were, there's the pantry, there's a couple of free meals in our community, but those require transportation.
I have land, I try to grow something.
Mm-hmm.
But probably don't have land.
Right.
Or if it's the wrong time of the year to grow something.
I have to wait a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing if my child qualified for free and reduced lunch at school.
Yeah. You would do that?
Mm-hmm.
You'd make that phone call?
You know, it's really I'm thinking about it, it's really a serious chicken egg type situation. If you have food insecurity, there's probably a good chance you're very short of money. And if you're short of money, you probably don't have adequate transportation or can't afford it. And therefore, it's extremely difficult to get a job so you get some money. So, I mean, it's really a self-fulfilling prophecy of disaster.
It could be a horrendous cycle of despair.
Yeah.
You've got a car, but geez, something goes wrong with a refinery somewhere in Texas or something, and gas jumps from $2.85 to $3.24,
Well,
and you can't put enough gas in the car.
and how do you get to the food pantry? Hitchhike? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a little ways out of town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The couple people that I know that who, insecurity might be an issue, they become very assertive about, not assertive, but they connect with people that can get them places.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we have a special needs person in our church that uses the programs that we have, but she has a disability, and to even use a knife is,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it's got me thinking a little bit about people with disabilities, and even preparing the food is a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With
knowing what to do with some of the things you might be given at the food pantry, even having the knowledge, not alone just the physical
Yeah.
ability, but the knowledge. What do you do with the bag of
But
rice?
there is somebody that visits people that helps them with things like that. So it's interesting. You get to see some of the programs that are out there that this person gets a visit by somebody once a week in these kinds of things, trying to figure out how to use the food, or run an errand, or maybe cutting up the vegetables or whatever. But it's like, well, you can prepare this food, but no, you can't prepare this food that you've given.
Right.
But I guess my point is that, and the other person doesn't drive, but they have figured out how to connect with people that can get them there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm curious about the food pantry, well, Lakeland Pantry, I should say, and whether they feel like it is a problem for people to get to their physical place in order to collect the food.
Yeah.
Whether they have people that
Or
they connect with.
Do people call and say, hey, I would love to visit the food pantry, but I have no idea how to get there, or how to go about getting there?
Would public transit help?
Public transit would help.
Well-
Well, and even,
We do have
yeah,
public
we do have some public transit, and that I think is a helpful. Were you asking a specific question, Dave, of have I, because yes, sometimes I hear people ask that question and they're not aware of they didn't know about the pantry. Like, have you been in touch with the Lakeland Pantry? And they'll be like, no, what's that? And be able to try to connect them with that. And there used to be a barrier there of they were only, available on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But now we have boxes that can tide people over for a while that, here that I can give to people. So yeah, I think those are all great ideas. What if were you picturing yourself being food insecure more of a long-term situation? I think, Holly, you thought if you could grow things, you would do that. So you were kind of thinking, this might be a longer-term situation to me. What if you only thought it was short-term? What might you be doing if it was just thinking, things will get better? What might you do in the short run?
Might not ask for help.
Why not?
What would you do?
Because you think it's gonna be a short period and you think you can get through it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Pride
Reach out
gets in
to-
the way a lot of
Mhm.
times.
Well, what happens when the short term goes longer?
Yeah. Reach out to family.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you could reach out to family if you have family. Would you borrow money?
But that
From
doesn't always
family?
work to reach out to family. Sometimes they're pretty judgmental.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People in general can be that way, judgmental.
Remember, if you're hungry, you're not doing your best thinking.
Mhm.
You might be starting to feel depressed. You might be feeling shame. Did any of you think of how you would feel? Or did you immediately think of, oh, I can access these resources? But shame, pride, fear, all are really powerful emotions for people who find themselves in these situations, especially when they think they might be short term. And that's why there's significant, there's research to show that people who find themselves food insecure, in food insecurity or in a sudden situation like this, they're more likely to access something from like a payday loan. Because then, they think that can just, well, I'll get through this. And that will get it better. Or credit card debt, you get the car breaks down, but if I get this, it's gonna cost $700 and there's no way I'm gonna get that, but if I take this little loan, I can get it, or I put it on and then it becomes, even if you get back, you're now significantly in debt and you continue in a situation in which you're food insecure. But yeah, it's good to stop and think about that. All of those things. There were some other things that other classes have come up with. That there were some who suggested I would try to find a additional or another job. As a younger man, well, I would still do it today if I had to. I'm going to provide for my family. I don't care. I'll go and flip burgers, whatever. I'll go work 3 shifts I'll do whatever I have to do. But is that sustainable? Can you do that?
Or if
Steal.
you have kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You could go steal things, steal food, steal.
That. Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I was growing up, my dad was laid off from FWD and he had 4 kids to support. And he ended up taking a different job for the meantime out of town. So they had to get him an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And he had just like a little small plate. Mom would make him all, food to take along and stuff, so he'd have something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, just to get money.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's another economic factor that we don't usually mention. I'm thinking when I lived in Topeka, there was a grocery store chain like we have Triggs up here, happened to be called Dillon's, and we end up with food deserts. Dillon's had they were a good store. I'm not knocking them at all, but they had 2 regular grocery stores in, let's call it, the black area of Topeka. They had to close them both because they were just losing their shirts through robbery, shoplifting, whatever you want to call it. So unfortunately, what was created was called a food desert. Here's an entire area totally unserviced with any kinds of food other than quick shops. And you know what wonderful food that is. There's another word for it, but I won't use it. And many of these, I remember because the company I worked for was right downtown at that time. And I'd say that parking lot was, their parking lots were never full because most of the people pulled a coaster. I mean, this was a poor area of the city. They took a coaster to the grocery store to do their shopping, which made sense. Well, when you close down these stores, there's absolutely, you're creating a food dilemma that is no fault of their own. Maybe some of their people, yeah, but how do you solve that problem?
Mm,
I mean, I do know from reading the newspaper, the food pantry in downtown Topeka went nuts. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, they could have been open 36 hours a day.
right.
So, I mean, there's so many outside impacts on the hunger problem that I don't know how the heck you're going to solve it.
Right. So that's a great point, John, and for us to think about here too is that there's lots of impact, lots of things that affect in terms of the hunger situation on the individual level that we could look at. Like when you read some of the case studies, you think of, boy, what does this single mom need? Well, she needs a whole lot of things, and she needs a whole lot of things fast, immediately. But then there, as John points out, there's huge structural issues beyond, right? And we've been talking about that the whole time. So it kind of comes to us as our dilemma: what should we do about hunger? And what do you think our responsibility as Christians can be to hunger? And one of them I'm going to lift up here is that God wants us both to respond to the issues of hunger with, as the writers here are defining it, charity, a short-term response to people's immediate needs. Okay, so you can picture, what do you think a charity might be? That the food pantry, right?
Well, we gave money to the people who were burned out.
Yes, we the people
They need
who.
different housing, it would be more expensive, so they probably didn't have money.
And donating, getting something from Goodwill or St. Matthias, thrift stores, those kinds of things can be charity that will take will address someone's immediate need, that we can have. Yes,
Well,
Deb.
one need we have is for people to be educated. I mean, poor people, needy people, plus people that have plenty. Like, I spoke about, I would sign my child up for free and reduced lunch. Well, first of all, you need to know it's available.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to educate the staff to look for kids in the lunchroom that are sitting there and not eating, and ask why, or wonder why, or report it to someone. I mean, there's so many people that just aren't aware of what is happening.
And you have a pretty good experience with that as being an educator and
Yeah,
administrator.
see,
Mm-hmm.
I was really shocked at the beginning of the year with how many applications would come in. I mean, it was like this, and it was a smaller school.
Mm-hmm.
And I would in the evening sit and watch TV and look at all my, numbers. Okay, does this kid qualify? And it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are kids whose moms aren't aware or they're too lazy to fill it out. So then you have to go to the house and offer it. But it's,
Yeah,
it takes a lot of thought and effort.
Mm-hmm. Just for one assistance program, there's lots of barriers.
Yeah.
Is it, you said maybe the moms or the families might be too lazy, and that might be sometimes, but are the parents capable enough?
Right. Well, in some cases, they're just in this big trench of depression.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same house you go visit at Christmas time and there's no tree.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all bleak. But then, I mean, I shouldn't have used the word lazy. I should have said not motivated for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're not lazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some studies indicate the amount of energy that a person in poverty spends just to make it through a day is overwhelming.
Yeah, we don't even think of that.
To then let anything extra paperwork that they've never looked at, and they can't see the immediate reward of it, really kills motivation. Or even if they know this is a good thing, I just don't have the energy to care, to fill it out.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's charity things that we can do for immediate needs, and then we want to think of this, break it into response with justice. And there's the authors here describe justice as a structural, community-based response to meet ongoing needs, legally mandated responsibilities towards other persons. So there is what we're going to look at here for a second is the idea that perhaps God is saying we as Christians should respond in both of these ways. We should seek to offer charity. We should seek to offer care for the immediate needs, but we should also seek to respond with justice. Okay, so to have us think about that a little bit, if you've got a Bible handy, I need someone to look up, and some of these things will be, mostly we're going to look at some things in the Old Testament. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 7 through 8 and 10 and 11. Sue Leffler, can you look up Deuteronomy 15? Deuteronomy 15. Holly, would you look up Leviticus 25, 8 through 12? And Dave, how about you look up Deuteronomy 15, back in Deuteronomy there, but you're going to just do the first two verses, Deuteronomy 1 through 2. Deb, you want to look up Leviticus 19, 9 through 10. And Sarah, you want to look up for me Exodus 23, Exodus 23, verses 10 and 11. Okay. Now, all of these passages that we're going to look at come out of the Judeo, the Hebrew law. Okay, and these are ancient cultural specific things, but they can start to give us a sense of how God has, from the earliest interactions with humanity, has advocated for both charity and for justice. So Sue, I might not remember who has everything. So Sue, you had the Deuteronomy 15, 7 and 8 and 10, 11. Could you read that for us?
So
7 verses 7 and 8, and then 10 and 11.
Okay.
Skip verse 9.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure why, at the top of my head, why you need to skip verse 9. But
Okay. If anyone is poor among your fellow Israelites in any of the towns of the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward them. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend them whatever they need. Skip 9, right?
mm-hmm.
Give generously to them and do without a grudging heart. Then because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land.
Okay. What does that sound like when you hear that passage? Does that sound like charity or justice, or both?
Charity.
Yeah. There's, but this also, there's something specific. What does it take to give charity?
Well, for one thing, you have to be trusting that the person really needs what they're asking for. For example, I was sitting in Craig's parking lot and a lady came up and approached me and asked me for money for gas. And she said, I went to see my friend in Park Falls and didn't realize that I wouldn't have enough gas to get home. And I thought, well, is this lady conning me? You know, that was one side of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now I'm glad I gave her the money. And I figured, well, if she was dishonest, she was going to go buy something else with it, that's on her. But I gave her a $20 bill, and I'm glad I did it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's just hard to say, you know, to not be judgmental and say,
Mm-hmm.
you really need this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
You have to have an
that
open mind.
that's a great example, Deb. Thank you. Because this passage calls us to be, have a generous heart, to be open-hearted to them. Don't resist that urge to be skeptical. But you're right. I mean, we all know there's scammers out there, right? Oh, good grief. I mean, we had a scammer call the church here about gave both Mary and I a heart attack because it was like, they're going to come, the sheriff's department was going to come and serve some papers and they had to get this phone call and like, oh man. And it was scary. We know there's bad people out there, right? But most of the time, most of the people that need help, that ask for help, are not the bad people, right? I will share with what Deb said. This is challenging. I remember as as a student pastor, in Benton, Wisconsin, I got moved into the parsonage in July of 2002, and the first 5 knocks on the door are all church ladies who look at this tall, skinny, former drywalling seminary student pastor, and thought I was going to die. And with the amount of food that they brought me, if they would only see me now. But I have a vivid picture. The 6th knock was a guy asking for help, and he wouldn't leave until I gave him money, and I spent 4 years there, and he was always scamming something. And it was such a hard feeling. I felt like I was supposed to give him something, and I did. I gave him a lot, and talking to a mentor about this, and they were like, you have to make a choice, that you can either give them the money and realize, just as Deb said, that then the rest is on them. You have to be smart, you have to be safe, and you need to make sure that you're not going to be victimized more than just what you're comfortable giving. They're like, don't give them your car, there's a limit, but you have to be willing. If you're, from this passage, is like, you have to make up your own mindset, your own choice of heart of, okay, I'm going to help you with that immediate need because that's who I am. And whatever you're going to do with that is going to be up to you. Okay. And it's not your fault, your responsibility. Now, if the same person keeps coming back to you, there's some chance for perhaps some justice, some long-term assistance instead of this, in realizing that, actually my charity to you is not going to give you the cash because I have found you and I've experienced this. I have found you, I've seen you, what you have done with this money. And it wasn't for that need. And you hurt yourself with it. And so I'm not going to give you money, but I will take you someplace that you can get help. I will do this for you, but I won't, that's not going to help you anymore. So you have to make up your choice. How are you going to respond to someone asking for assistance or seeing someone with an assistance? And it's about who you want to be. And I think that's what the Deuteronomy passage, that God is saying, don't be, don't be skewed, don't be skeptical. You can be skeptical, you can realize, they're probably going to go out and buy some cheap liquor with this and get drunk or what have you, but I'm going to be generous and open because that's who God wants me to be. Okay. All right.
Took
Who?
your advice once, and somebody said, we just don't have enough gas to get home. And I said, well, I'll meet you at Trix Pump and I'll pay for your gas.
Mhm.
They must have had a 50-gallon tank. I didn't know they were on that empty.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, well, that's what I did.
You knew it went to gas though.
Yeah, I knew
Yeah,
it went to
right.
gas, that's why I did
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's close to Trix, I'll just,
Yep.
pay for it, we'll do it at the pump. Well,
Yeah.
And then I had to think about what my mom taught me about, you don't know what form Jesus will take. And I
Mhm.
thought later on, was that Jesus knocking on my window? And this just gives me the chills
Yeah,
to think of
yeah.
that. So there's, a lot that we've been taught, but then there's a lot out there.
Well, I will say this. It might not have been Jesus, but Jesus saw it.
But Jesus what?
But Jesus saw it.
Yep.
And that's what I think it's more about who we see ourselves to be than they act, there's tons of these videos out there. They make shows about, and there was even that, the fraud, if you guys heard about this lady, it was all a scam. That this woman was approached by a homeless guy at the gas pump and asked for $20, and it was all she had, and so she had barely got the car home on empty, but they gave $20 to this guy, and somehow they turned it into a Kickstarter fundraiser page that they were going to raise money for this, and it turned in and the late it was a scam. But people want to prey on that. But again, I've heard a lot of people in the comments, I think I still would have given that person that $20 because it's who we want to be, who God calls us to be. Like, sure, that wasn't my fault. You didn't take advantage of me because this is who I am. And I think that's an important part of identifying how we are going to respond. It connects to our core value as a congregation of generosity, of saying we're willing to give all that we are and all that we are as people, and our resources to express the love of God. What you do with that's going to be up to you. I mean, Jesus tells parables about that. That's one aspect of the parable of the sower and the soils, is I'm going to offer all of you the same seed, the same gift, and how you respond to that. That's on you. That's not on me. Now, yes, like I said, also, you do have to. Holly, I sure hope Bob was with you. No? Be careful. You do have to.
Yeah, I didn't drive them there or
All right.
anything, I just.
You do have to
We met up at Trix
right.
Pump.
You do have to recognize you do have to be safe with yourself. But whatever, if you can give whatever you're in your mind, I could give this freely give it in the most safe way. I'm not, oh, you're just a scammer, there are some people that I come here that for 12 years, I know here, probably in a couple of weeks, I'm going to get a call from one person in particular, and I'll spend 15 minutes on the phone with her, talking to her, and say, well, no, I'm not going to help you with your rent this month. You've got other resources, and reminder of all those things, but I'm not going to give her any more money. But I'll listen to her. Talk to her, I'll pray to her, tell her, reminder of the resources she has that helps her in those situations. But you make those choices and you're safe. We know those things are going to happen, but be open and be generous. Okay, Holly. So God wants us to be charitable, is kind of what Deuteronomy is saying there. Holly, you had the Leviticus 25, right?
Yes.
Okay.
This is about the year of Jubilee, this is the Lord talking to Moses. Count off 7 Sabbaths of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the 7 Sabbaths of years amount to a period of 49 years. Then have the trumpet sounded everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the day of atonement. Sound the trumpet throughout your land. Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each one of you is to return to his family property and each to his own clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. Do not sow and do not reap what grows of itself or harvest the unintended vines, for it is a jubilee and is to be holy for you. Eat only what is taken directly from the fields.
Sorry, I have a new phone. I don't know how to make it not make noise. All right, thank you, Holly. So, how many of you have heard of the year, the Jubilee year, the year of Jubilee before in the Hebrew tradition? So the concept, and I always get confused. You know, it's I've never really sat down to map it all up, but the concept is every seventh year, no, it's like every 49 years, something. Basically, once a generation, there is everything gets cleaned up.
Wipe out debts, is that?
Yeah,
Say
yeah.
that exactly.
So who had the Deuteronomy 15:1 and 2?
I do.
Okay, read that, because I think these two go together, connect.
Every 7th year you shall grant a remission of debts, and this is the manner of the remission. Every creditor shall remit the claim that is held against the neighbor, not exacting it of a neighbor who is a member of the community, because the Lord's remission has been proclaimed.
Okay, so these are two concepts. Two concepts within the Hebrew tradition. That every 7 years, if you have a debt that you've been repaying, that you lent somebody, the terms can be no longer than 7 years, basically. That after that,
Mortgages.
yeah, yeah, no, no, and
not a very good deal for the lender, at least.
no. But that's a good concept to hold on to, what Dave said. And then what Holly was reading is the year of the Jubilee, in 49 years. So what if you have a string of bad luck and you have to sell off some of your land, your family land? I mean, you hear stories of the farm auctions and things like that, farms that have been in generations and generations and generations, and and they can't, they have to sell off these farms that have been part of their family for a century, and and they have to move away. Sometimes people even in those times would end up basically selling themselves off as slaves or as indentured servants, is for essentially what it was too. And so that the idea there's in the Hebrew tradition, God was commanding that once a generation you would return to your homeland. So if it was you would return back to your family's land, and you would have that you wouldn't have these things that would cripple you generationally into poverty. That every so often there would be a refreshing of where people would stand, in the community. But here's a little secret that I saw in one commentator basically say, is that the year of Jubilee was never really implemented in Hebrew society. But could you imagine, how many times do we talk of things of like generational wealth? We talk of generational poverty, generational cycles of poverty. And we can black and white shouldn't say this because it is a racial issue. You can look and see how much resources, wealth have moved away from African American families and into generationally, into white society, and it just continues to build, generationally and generationally. That you can basically, that's where the idea of you can predict a person's economic, life, status, their education, their fulfillment in life, and where they're going to end up by which zip code they were born in. Because of these issues of generational poverty and generational wealth. And so we hear as you hear these two passages, the 7-year debt forgiveness and the generational jubilee, what do you hear God calling people to?
Well, specifically, kind of a periodic redistribution,
Mm-hmm.
but justice in general.
Yeah, this would be, there's situations that are big, that are long-term situations, and they have to be addressed before they get too bad, right?
And that's always a battle in our country, probably all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly we should focus on our country, I guess, but, what do people who have great means owe back to society? And how do we, having a tax system that supposedly is, what's the word for it, Bob? Can't think right now. Or having a progressive tax system is supposed to help with that. So that if you have greater means, you pay a higher percentage of your wealth,
Mm-hmm.
income tax.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's a constant battle to figure out what is fair,
Mm-hmm.
or is fair what it's all about,
Mm-hmm.
or is just is what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Different, I guess.
Right. Have you ever seen this picture of 4 pictures of a baseball field, and there's one, of tall person, a medium height person, and a shorter person, could be brothers, what have you, watching a baseball game from the outfield. And then the next panel is that there's a fence that blocks the view of the shortest person. Okay, and then the question is what should be done? Okay, do you lower if you just went with fair and gave everybody a box to stand on, the same height, but it's too hard to see without. But it illustrates the difference between fair, giving everybody the same thing, and giving and justice, or doing what will be right, giving everybody what they need so that they can experience, so that they could experience the see the baseball game, happening. That there is a difference in our mindsets that we have to think of between fair and just. And show me was a good one. You made sure that I was, in my preaching, I was talking about what justice really meant, because justice doesn't necessarily mean that one person gets, everybody gets the same thing. No, and nor is justice taking away from the one who has a lot, but it's making sure that everybody has the same, has what they need to experience life and to be able to enjoy life. And so I think the concepts of debt forgiveness and jubilee that we hear in the Old Testament, these are clearly God from the beginning talking about just. And I think there's lots of other places where throughout Scripture, and especially in Jesus' teaching, that we get this idea of God wants us to be justice-minded as well, not just to see the short-term thing. One of my favorite ways of seeing this in Christ is, people, think of your favorite healing parable. Someone's can't walk, someone is sick, someone is dead, someone is blind, and they bring them to Jesus to heal them. And what does Jesus say? Your sins are forgiven.
Your faith has made you well.
Well, he'll say that too, but he always says your sins are forgiven. And they're like, I wasn't worried about my sins. You know, my friends lowered me down through this roof because I can't walk. And you're saying, forgive my sin, you've forgiven my sins. But then Jesus says, your faith has healed you, get up and walk, see. Jesus looked at what they really needed, which was to be made right with God, and then address their immediate need as well. So Jesus was, eternally sighted, long-term vision, as well as that short term. This is your immediate need. We also in James, you also hear, what good is it to say, go and be warm and well fed, and watch your neighbor walk away naked and hungry, without giving them a cloak, without giving them food. We need to be charity and justice minded. Who had the Leviticus 19 passage? Was that you, Sarah?
I had Exodus.
Oh, you had
Oh, I
Exodus.
had
So you had the
19.
Leviticus 19?
Mhm.
Okay.
When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleaning of your harvest. You shall not strip your vineyard bare, or gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the alien. I am the Lord your God.
Okay. I think, have you all heard this idea about the gleaning before? Sorry. Again, I don't know how to make it not make noise. What do so the idea is, you're a farmer, or whatever you have, you're producing something, but when you go out and harvest, obviously there's stuff left, there's, no harvest, don't pick everything, don't take everything off, leave some so that people can come out and gather what they need.
And can we apply that to non-agricultural practices? I mean, we're not in the agricultural business, most of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think.
So, does that mean if you're a business person, do you leave enough profit left over for your employees, or do you reduce your fees, charges enough that more people can afford what you're offering in your business, or I don't know?
I think, yes, absolutely, Dave. It's easy to think of, if you're an apple orchard and you go and shake the apple tree, not all of it's going to fall into the catch or whatever. But yeah, how would you apply that to I think those are great ideas. Yeah, that it isn't just take everything that you can, so that there's something that would benefit someone else.
There's so much waste, like grocery stores will throw away things that people don't buy, or fruit and vegetables that are less than perfect because people only buy perfect things. So that's kind of like gleaning, giving the leftover stuff to people.
It's illegal to go to the dumpster and for them to give you that stuff that's about to expire.
We're our own worst enemy in that regard, with government regulations.
But the concept too is that, they will actually just stuff will get sorted out in the field. And if it doesn't meet the quality of what they'll sell in a retail marketplace, some of it just gets left over. But you know what? There's barbed wire fence around that field.
I do know a potato farmer in Antigo. I don't know personally, but he's a friend of a friend who has delivered cases. I don't know what they call the units, these big boxes that they have potatoes in, over to the pantry. Potatoes he couldn't sell.
Yeah, because they looked weird or something, right? Or just extra.
It does happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still happening.
Well, they just got it delivered in a lot of potatoes.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry. I'm getting a. but what does when you hear the story of the gleaning, what does this kind of think of? Is this charity?
Mhm.
You're leaving something available for people to use to meet their immediate need. But how also is this passage an example of justice?
Well, for one thing, they still have to work for it.
Mm-hmm. There's some accountability on the person. They have to go out and get it. You don't have to put it in their hands. It's available for them, but they need to go and get it. Sure. How else is this an example of a justice, of a justice perspective? Long-term responsibility towards others, legally / divinely mandated.
Mhm.
Well, if it's a business, like you mentioned, if you've had a really good year, let's face it, a part of that good year is because you've had good employees who have
Mhm.
also put forth a little extra effort. So I don't let's call it the Christmas bonus for lack of a better term. If you're giving them out nice Christmas bonuses, I don't call that charity. I call that justice, because you've had a good year. It isn't all me because I own the business.
Mhm.
Without you, there wouldn't be a
Right.
business.
Mhm.
So I think that's justice.
You're treating that is a just treatment of your
Yeah.
employees of recognize. This to me as I hear this, it's much more. It's about justice because it's talking about the perspective of that owner of that farm, of that field, of that business. That it's not just about you. It's about the whole community. The people working in your field, and because the people working in your field might have to come back later that night and gather some stuff up for themselves. It's about your perspective of the people realizing there's people around me who are going to be in need of this, and if I'm just thinking about myself and my returns, my profit, the most that I can get, this is calling us to change that perspective. So both of these go that way. We are just about at our hour, and what we're going to kind of switch to the sabbatical year, that the Exodus passage that is kind of similar to all what we've been talking about here. But I want to just shift, because what we're going to do is I want you guys to think about, primarily, if you look at handouts 8 and 9, these are ideas of programs for helping people who are food insecure. Handout 8 is about community-based food and nutritious assistance. Handout 9 gives examples of state and federal assistance programs for it. But the key parts, as what I want you guys to look and think about, kind of as some homework here, is just run through. How is that addressing people's immediate needs? How is that addressing? Is it addressing the justice issue? Is there? Look for. Are there things missing? Is there a lack of charity? Is there a lack of justice in the programs that we know that are out there, right? So as you think about it, think too about how you started the session and thinking about what you would do if you were food insecure. A lot of you immediately said, well, I would try to get to the pantry. That's the charity response. But then what's encouraging is that then you were like, if I could get there, if I had transportation, what if, of looking, maybe there is something bigger to this situation that might be preventing people from getting an immediate need. Maybe there is a systematic issue here that that is preventing people from being able to get to that. So review page handouts 8 and 9, think about the programs that you're aware of, and just kind of categorize them in your head. How does this address the immediate need, the charity need? Does this address the needs of justice, or and vice versa? Think of that. And then asking yourselves, as we're reflecting on this for next week on these issues, like I said, in our community, start asking yourself, is there enough charity? Is there enough justice for the needs of the food insecurity in our community, for everybody and for us? Like I said, next week, since schedule is changing a little bit, we hopefully will have 2 representatives of local from the pantry, and hopefully from Fork, which is Feed Our Rural Children, which deals a lot more with Vilas counties.
I think it's Vilas
And Oneida. Yeah, they're, from what I, and I haven't told it, like kind of far more of the eastern side of it, of our counties too. So that we'll be able to talk about, share a little bit about their organizations, and we'll be able to start talking about some of those things, because what we do about hunger as individuals and as a church, as we can see here, scripturally, needs to be grounded in both charity and in justice. And I think you all already were there. Understand that. So thank you all.